came across this article in the New York Times that I wanted to make sure I shared with all of you fine folks. The New York Times has been doing several different pieces trying to diminish the achievements of President Trump, more specifically around the law. Now, I want to get to what some of these legal experts, again, this is the New York Times, are saying about President Trump, and then kind of lay out the fact that all of the things that they are concerned about either are come from laziness or lies. Though the laziness or lies, not stupidity or lies. The New York Times has this article, and in the article it says this: 8 months, I'm using my scary voice, 8 months into his second term, Trump has taken a wrecking ball to those beliefs, the beliefs that, hey, we're not really in a ton of legal trouble here. One of the former officials who they say served in both Republican and Democrat administrations, including in President Trump's first term, which again, they don't name anybody. It's just you have to trust us. This is a legal expert. Says this: what's happening is an anathema to everything we've ever stood for in the Department of Justice. Dun, dun, dun. We could go on here, but I don't want to take up too much time continuing on in this ridiculous article. Here's the thing with President Trump. He has pushed the boundaries on laws. That is an objective fact. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with continually trying to test the boundaries of what the Constitution allows for the administration, in this case specifically, the President of the United States. That's what the courts are for. We've all seen so many headlines. District federal judge or federal judge denies President Trump doing whatever. Okay, and he appeals that to a higher court. And if that doesn't work out in his favor, he appeals it to a higher court. And the Supreme Court says something. Whether or not they side with him, he is okay with that decision. I don't know that he's necessarily okay, but he respects that decision, which is entirely different from the past administration. Remember when President Biden tried to cancel student debt? And the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. And then he tried it again, and they had to tell him again that you can't do that. That was he was utterly ignoring the highest court in the land, which is ignoring the Constitution effectively, which is actually bad. People who talk about President Trump while pushing the boundaries, yeah, these are all open questions. That's what the country is. There are questions about the constitutionality of a lot of different things that haven't necessarily been settled. That's why the Supreme Court exists. What President Trump hasn't done is ignored the courts or defied the courts. He's tried to find different ways and different alternatives to get what he wants done, but he's never openly said, screw you, I'm going to do what I want. Every single time he tries something that, admittedly hasn't necessarily been tried, the courts take a look at it. And whatever the courts decide, President Trump generally respects, or at least up until this point has respected all of the court's decisions. So, to make the claim that the New York Times is making, we interviewed 50 legal experts saying that this is a terrible time. Is it really? Or are you people just lazy? You don't want to do the work in trying to figure out what the Constitution allows by going through the legal process, which is what President Trump is doing. It seems ridiculous that we're in this position right now, but it also makes sense, especially in the context of the last couple decades. Liberals have been able to do anything and everything they want because they have the backing of the media, most importantly, and quite honestly, they don't really have a respect for law. And then when President Trump comes in and, yes, pushes the boundaries a little bit, but also respects the court's decision, they scream and cry that this is the end of democracy and, oh my gosh, the world is coming to an end. What a disaster. Well, the first time President Trump openly defies the courts, let me know. Hasn't happened yet. And considering the fact that it hasn't happened yet, it's difficult for me to believe that it's going to happen anytime soon, if at all. Not like Joe Biden, who did do all of the things that they're accusing President Trump of, but nobody mentioned it then. But such is the case in the lib media-controlled bubble and sphere of influence that they continue to try to have. I would have said continue to have, but I think we're making a lot of headway in the conservative movement.